So this nurse is on death row for killing 4 patients in his own hospital unit. His name is William Davis. He killed them with air, pushed into the line, in their wrist. And on a recorded call from jail, his ex-wife asked him about a woman he said had died, a year before any of this started. She asked if that woman was his first. He said, yes. 4 men, 1 year, 1 heart unit. Every one of them had already survived the surgery, and he was never assigned to a single one of them. The first of the 4 was a hay farmer. John Lafferty had spent his career as an IRS special agent, retired, bought land, and he came through his heart surgery just fine. His son said it like this: he would do everything around the farm. He would not ask for help. And then, overnight, John Lafferty had a stroke that nobody could explain. About 6 weeks later, the 26th of July, it happened again. This time to a man named Ronald Clark. Clark's daughter Tiffany told the court she didn't just lose her father, she lost her friend, and that it pretty much destroyed her whole family. 2 men, about 6 weeks apart, same unit, same shift, and nobody had put those 2 things next to each other yet. The early hours of the 4th of August, 2017, Christopher Greenaway is 1 day past his own heart surgery, and doing well. At 3 in the morning, he is awake and asking for water. His brother would later tell the court, the loss affects their family every single day. At 3:15 that morning, Greenaway's assigned nurse, a man named Ben Raspberry, went to take his meal break. On his way out, he asked another nurse on the unit to keep an eye on Greenaway. That other nurse was William Davis. Raspberry was gone 20 to 30 minutes. In that window, the length of a meal break, Christopher Greenaway had a catastrophic stroke. 2 days later, he was dead. He was 47, and Davis was never his nurse. He'd just been asked to keep an eye on him. And this is where it starts to come apart for him, because not everybody died. Jesus Serrano was recovering normally from a triple bypass. His nurse that night was Natalie Kelly, and at one point, from outside his room, she heard Davis calling out, "Mr. Serrano! Mr. Serrano!" She got there, and Serrano was crashing. And Davis, who was not assigned to Serrano, was already in the room. And then she noticed it. A 10-milliliter syringe, attached to Serrano's arterial line. Then word goes out that Serrano's surgeon is on his way, and Davis tells her to take the syringe off the line, because the surgeon, he said, would be looking for it. Serrano lived. So did a woman named Pamela Henderson, whose nurse, Cordy Smith, was charting outside her room when a monitor went off. He ran in. Davis was already in there, standing at her bedside. And the explanation Davis gave him, Smith called implausible. Joseph Kalina was 58 years old, and he drove a truck for a living. He wasn't from Tyler. He was passing through. He was on a work trip, somewhere up around Mount Pleasant, when his chest started hurting. They got him to the hospital in Tyler. He had bypass surgery. He came through it. He was stable. He was going to go home. The 25th of January, 2018. Early hours. And this time, the hospital had cameras. The footage shows William Davis walking into Joseph Kalina's room, carrying an empty syringe. He is in there about a minute. Then he comes out, and he does not leave the floor. The court put it plainly. He watched from down the hall as other medical staff rushed to Kalina's room to save him. Joseph Kalina did not die that night. He was left with catastrophic brain damage, and his family took care of him for 2 more years before he died of it. His wife Jeanette had been married to him for 37 years. She told the court, "I didn't realize it at the time, but he was my other half. There'll never be another Joey." And by then, the woman who ran that unit had already sat down to watch the tape. The clinical director of that unit was a woman named Teresa Meeks, and by January, she knew something was very wrong. Patients who should have been fine were crashing, only at night. She said, they were awake, sitting up, doing well. Just no reason to expect that they would have a bad event. She said, "We were in shock. How could this possibly have occurred?" So she went back through the charts, and then she sat down to watch the security video from outside Joseph Kalina's room. She is watching a recording of something that has already happened. She already knows how it ends. And this is what she told the jury was going through her head. Everything kind of fell into my head all at the same time. Please, God, no. Please don't go in there. Don't go in that room. So the hospital went back through its own records. And of every night shift nurse in that unit, exactly one had been working for every single crash. Every one. And when they took that one nurse, William Davis, off the schedule, the crashes stopped. About 2 weeks after Kalina, the hospital took what it had to the Tyler Police Department. Now here is something worth understanding, because it changes everything about what happened next. In Texas, murder on its own is not a capital case. But killing more than one person as part of one course of conduct, that is capital murder. And capital murder is the one that carries the needle. So the state did not charge him with 4 separate killings. It charged him with one crime made out of all of them, which means the jury never had to agree on all 4. They had to agree on Christopher Greenaway, the man who died while his nurse was on a meal break, and at least one of the other 3. That is the verdict. That is what 4 means here. He was fired in February 2018 for falsifying records of the care he'd given, arrested that April, and in 2021, he went on trial for capital murder. It ran about 3 weeks. Surgeons, nurses, radiologists. And there was one thing that jury had not heard yet. His own voice. That comes later. First, the defense had one argument. Sometimes people die in a hospital, and that is a real argument. People do die in hospitals, which is exactly why nobody caught him for a year. But then the doctors explained what the scans actually showed. Dr. Charles Crum testified that the brain injuries were consistent with arterial air embolism. All of them. The same signature, over and over. And one of the doctors put it in a way the jury was never going to forget. That the pattern in those brains was so unique and so abnormal that you could take it and publish it in a peer-reviewed medical journal tomorrow. The jury went out. They were back in about an hour. Guilty. Capital murder. Then came the punishment phase, and this is where it got much bigger than 4. The state put on evidence that he had killed 3 more patients on that same ward, James Blanks, James Sanders, and Perry Frank, and seriously injured 3 more men on top of that. Same unit, same 12 months. 3 of the men who survived him came and testified: Gary Parker, James Wages, Ricky Glenn. And what they had in common was that they could barely remember being in that hospital at all. Gary Parker had driven over from Louisiana for his surgery. He owned a decorative concrete business. They told him he'd be back at work in 3 weeks. He never went back. He told the court it was like being under some kind of drug, that he was hallucinating bad, a different life. And the jury heard one more thing about Davis, that at 18 he'd been in a relationship with a 13-year-old girl, and when she refused to sneak out of her father's house to meet him, he threatened to beat her father. Now, hours after that jury came back and found him guilty, William Davis got on the phone at the Smith County Jail. 4 calls. 1 to his brother, 3 to his ex-wife, Alana, and in one of them, Alana is trying to get him to do the right thing. She tells him to take the stand at his own sentencing and apologize to the victims and their families. She says to him, "What you did was really wrong." And he says, "It was. I'm not even going to lie to you. I know it was. And I've asked God for forgiveness. But I think the right thing is what you just said, to be fully repentant. I think I have to take..." He doesn't finish the sentence. She finishes it for him. "You mean, and give a confession?" And he says, "Right." Then he asks her a question. "Do you want me to testify?" He never took the stand at his sentencing. The detective who investigated him, Jeff Roberts, was asked about those recordings. He told the jury that when Davis got emotional on the phone, he was emotional about himself, not about any of them. And while they were playing the call to his brother, the prosecutor turned back to the detective. Detective Roberts, in your experience, is there a difference between people who are sorry they did something and people who are sorry they got caught? Absolutely, he said. The state also had a laptop linked to him, and a Secret Service agent testified that about a month before the arrest, the search history on it showed somebody looking up serial killers. Specifically, a list of them, ranked by number of victims. But the thing that should genuinely stop you is on one of those calls to Alana, because he brings up something that has nothing to do with the heart unit at all. A different unit, the neuro ICU. An elderly woman, he said, died there, a year before he started harming anyone on the heart unit, before there was any pattern for anybody to find. And his ex-wife asks him, "Was she your first?" He says, "Yes." So the indictment said 4. The punishment phase said 7 dead and 5 more hurt. And the only person who has ever suggested it started before any of that is him. In closing, the state told the jury not to be fooled by what they had heard on that phone call to Alana. There is no remorse, the prosecutor told them, in what he told Alana. None. Don't be fooled by that fake repentance. The 27th of October, 2021. The jury was out, about 2 hours. They sentenced him to death. William Davis was 37 years old, born in Gregg County, Texas, and on the public record he was an ordinary nurse, right up until the 12 months in which he wasn't. And that is the part people always expect to find and don't. Nothing on the public record shows a trail of hospitals that quietly let him go. 1 unit, 1 hospital, 12 months, and a clinical director who sat down and watched a tape. In March of 2026, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ruled on his direct appeal. 13 separate arguments. A unanimous court rejected every single one and affirmed the death sentence. His lawyers asked the court to think again. In June, it refused. But it is not finished. Davis has a separate challenge still pending, and part of it concerns his own trial lawyer, who has since pleaded guilty to soliciting a prostitute during the trial. The filing says he may have been texting in court while a prosecution witness was on the stand. That claim is still sitting with the court, undecided. As of right now, the conviction stands, and William Davis is on death row in Texas. The thing I keep coming back to is this. Every one of these men had already done the hard part. They'd had their chest opened. They'd survived it. The dangerous part was over. They were in the safest place they could possibly be, being watched around the clock by people whose whole job was to keep them alive. John Lafferty's son said it better than I can.
I was mad. You leave the hospital thinking they're going to get treatment. That is not naive. That is just what a hospital is supposed to be. So be careful who you trust, and take care of yourself.
Everything you saw here comes from public court records and news reporting. The images are illustrations, not real footage. And all of it is true.